Whether you're standing in line waiting for a latte at Starbucks, or digging through your cabinet at the house looking for a cure for a hangover, or crushing cups of Keurig in the break room down at the office, there is one thing all of us share in common, and that is the recognition that coffee has become a core component of daily human existence. Thanks to globalization and modern economical trade deals, and fair trade deals at that, we can now appreciate some of the best beans on the planet from pretty much anywhere. Hell, we can order it online and have cups of Joe shipped to us in any form imaginable, from whole bean to percolator, rough cut, all the way down to the finest powder of instant you can imagine. And with this availability comes an entire bevy of options that are available to us, flavor profiles that 100 years ago nobody really knew about, and all sorts of new flavor blends are coming out, just like, oh, what do you know, cigar tobacco blends, which leads us to today's topic of conversation. Cigars and coffee just kind of seem like they're meant to be. They're really quite complementary to one another, but I won't bore you with coffee nerd notes because this is really a very deep conversation and isn't entirely what we are about here at Klaro. Instead, let's discuss 6 sticks that I have found pair beautifully with a cup of Joe, and different cups of coffee at that, different styles of coffee. Being that we have 6 sticks on this list, I have broken them down into 2 mild, 2 medium, and 2 full options for those of you who want to break it down in that regard and shop around accordingly. So, while I wait for my cup of Joe to cool down a little bit, let's get to it, shall we? The first stick on our list is one that I reviewed recently, and that is the J.C. Newman Brick House, Connecticut. This cigar has a double binder inside, so it's part broadleaf binder and part mysterious Nicaraguan binder, and it has a traditional Connecticut wrapper on the outside, which imparts this very doughy, tangy, almost buttermilk-like note to the cigar, which is very refreshing. But this isn't just your typical Connecticut shade-grown mild smoke. It's got all Nicaraguan fillers inside of it. And remember, those dark binders add a little bit more depth to the smoke than you typically would find. This results in a cigar that starts off on the light, doughy, tangy, hay-like familiar Connecticut side, but gradually shifts into almost like a cinnamon roll-like flavor without all the sticky sweetness. Being that cups of coffee and cinnamon rolls typically go together pretty damn well, I found myself actually wishing that I had paired that cigar with a cup of coffee at the time. I could see you going either side of the spectrum with either an iced coffee or a hot cup of coffee. The same can be said for the level of milk you add to your coffee, or whether you like a latte. I feel that going with something too dark or just drinking a cup of coffee that's black would just overpower the delicate flavor profiles of the cigar. But for anyone else who puts a little milk in their coffee, or milk and sugar, or likes to have, a frappuccino or something like that in summertime, great smoke to go with. Next up on our list of milder coffee pairing cigars that I absolutely adore is the CAO Flavors Eileen's Dream. Now, as many of you know, I am not a big fan of infused or flavored or perfumed cigars. It's just not my shtick. I prefer natural flavors from naturally fermented leaf the old-fashioned way, like most people. But there's just something about this blend that strikes me just right every time I fire one up and is ideal when paired with a cup of coffee. Part of this reasoning is probably due to the fact that it is a traditional Cameroon wrapped cigar, which is a mildish, medium-ish flavor and strength profile wrapper that is just loaded with nuttiness and smooth, creamy flavors. This nuttiness is further accented by an infusion of Irish whiskey, coconut milk, sweet cream, and white chocolate truffles. All of these infusions add a very interesting depth to the cigar that, again, pairs well with coffee, but also does not provide you with too sweet of a flavor. Additionally, this cigar comes in a traditional Corona size, so it's the perfect vitola for a cup, maybe two, of coffee, and it won't take you all day to get through. Moving into medium territory comes the Cohiba Riviera. This is another one of those cigars that I've reviewed recently and really enjoyed. Not just because of its flavor profiles, but also because it's the first box pressed San Andres Maduro wrap Cohiba in history. But even more fun than this fact is the flavor profiles of the cigar and the aromatics, which are quite intoxicating. And while I did pick up on familiar notes of earth and spice and cocoa and chocolate, all of which go very well with coffee, I detected far deeper, richer notes of brulee and roasted cashew halves and all sorts of dried cedar nuttiness behind it. Now, this is a cigar that will take you a little bit longer to smoke than the first two for sure, but it's by no means a monster of a stick either. It burns cool, it burns clean, it's got great construction, the box pressing's beautiful, and it finishes on a fantastic note of vanilla and dried nuts. Speaking of nuts, those of you who enjoy a little bit of hazelnut creamer in your coffee are gonna get a kick out of the Macanudo Cru Royale. Both times that I smoked and thoroughly enjoyed the Cru Royale, I found myself putting down whatever I drink I had at the moment and going and get a cup of coffee because it's really meant to be paired with that kind of caffeine. Flavor profiles in this stick are a little bit more complex than just hazelnut, too. I picked up on Brazil nut milkiness as well as some cashew and toasted pecan at times. This was likely due to that gorgeous, super oily Habano wrapper that cloaks this cigar. Unlike other Macanudo sticks on the market, this one has a bit of kick to it, but in a very pleasant medium sort of way. This creates a very earthy, mildly spiced, peppery, black peppery at that level of intensity that goes very well with this milky cocoa creaminess that just gradually builds within the cigar until you reach the crescendo at the end. It's also a short smoke at 5 by 50, so you're not going to have a huge amount of time on your hands sitting down and smoking it because, let's face it, we like coffee, but after the 7th or 8th cup, that's a bit much. Forging our way deeper into stronger, darker territory comes the Curivari Buenaventura BV560 Maduro. Now, the Buenaventura BV560 Maduro isn't really all the way full, at least not to me. I found it to be somewhere in between medium and full, which is a good equilibrium and a great pairing for coffee because you don't want anything too strong on the cigar side, because if you're drinking something a little on the lighter side roast-wise in regard to coffee or like adding a fair deal of milk to it, you might not be able to taste your cup of caffeine. This is one of those cigars that has Mexican hot chocolate notes. It has a little bit of a cinnamon cocoa note to it, and it's very milky. This makes the cigar an ideal option for those who are fans of mochas or Mexican hot chocolate hybridized mocha blends. It's got loads of vanilla notes, it's got chestnut notes to it, the roasted kind, as well as some interesting earthy undertones and some aftertastes that are pretty damn special. Cashews, cocoa, a little bit of bitter espresso beans, and another fat dollop of vanilla to close it out in a dry finish that is going to make you want to sip that coffee all the more. And then to close things out with our 6th and final stick is the smoke that I have in my hand right now, the EP Carrillo Allegiance. Essentially, EP Carrillo collabed with Oliva and then said, you know what, you guys do such a damn good job, why don't you just make the cigar for me and, we'll make some money together. So they did. Now, while this cigar may look really dark and Maduro-like, it's actually a Sumatran wrapped cigar, an Ecuadorian wrapped cigar at that. You're going to get some spice notes that are very unique unto Sumatran tobacco leaf. Herb tea, chai tea, exotic spice-like notes, but when heavily fermented, turn into a very rich Sumatran coffee-like note. Being that many of us do appreciate Sumatran dark roast coffee, this cigar is ideal for pairing with such blends or straight up pure beans. One of those cigars that you could pair with a cup of coffee that has milk cream in it, ice, hot, whatever you want, as long as the coffee itself is robust enough to stand up to the blend itself. The reason for this is simple. It's not just the spice in the cigar that is, I wouldn't say intense, but very, very vibrant. It's also the fact that there's a sweetness that builds alongside with some darkness that makes for a very rich flavor profile. And then with that flavor profile comes more earthiness, more cocoa, more coffee, and a very, very memorable aftertaste. It is this aftertaste that actually allows the cigar to be paired with coffee and actually stand up to it. If it weren't for it, I would think that a stronger cup of coffee, a Sumatran blend of sorts, would just overpower the cigar and you really wouldn't be able to taste as much of it. Now, that's not to say that these 6 sticks that I just listed are your only options for pairing with coffee. There are a bazillion other options out there that go great with a cup of joe, many of which we stock at Klaro. This particular moment in my life, I find that these 6 are my personal go-tos, and I find that because I've reviewed them, I can more thoroughly convey the flavor profiles and significance of each stick to you by clicking on the links below, of course. I can't include all that info in one review. You guys are crazy. And yes, I know that some of you don't drink coffee and are tea drinkers. So maybe at some point, if y'all would like for me to have an herb tea cigar pairing or just tea and cigar pairing listicle, I can put one together because black tea, green tea, different kinds of iced tea, spiked tea. Oh man, bring on the ice picks. Come to think of it, what am I going to pair with my afternoon cigar? Anywho, I'll let y'all get along with your day and check out my reviews below and links. And I'll get back to my cup of coffee now that it's cooled down. Oh, damn it. It's gotten cold on me.